Hello, welcome back to Mind Over Mass. I was never a very good student. I was usually like C's and B's, maybe like one or two A's here and there, but I really was pretty much a very average, below average student. And when I got to Western, I turned it around and because I just realized that I really enjoyed learning. So I've been working with someone recently in one of our arts fields. I don't particularly want to say which one. I guess by context you could probably figure it out. Recently just started getting into Shakespeare. Typically I'm not a really big reader. I used to love reading, and it's just one of those things. It's like it's easier to turn on the TV than it is to pick up a book. So here we are. But having started to be interested in this new arts field, I feel that if you're going to go into it, you really do have to learn your Shakespeare. I started working on, not supposed to call it what it is, it's like bad luck. You're supposed to call it the Scottish play or the Bard's Tale. So I'm working on reading through and learning the Scottish play. Oh, it's like opened up an entirely new world. Like, I really enjoy reading, but there's something different about this. I love that you have to do a lot of research. Pretty much like every line you have to kind of look it up. And then, of course, stumbled across No Fear Shakespeare, I think, and individual who's kind of taken me under their wing sent me to Spark Notes. And I remember, like, even when I was in high school, like, Spark Notes was a huge no-no, and No Fear Shakespeare, like, that was a huge no-no. The teachers just frowned upon it so much because, God forbid, you need a little bit of help. I was basically, instructed to start learning the sonnets and memorizing the sonnets first because they're smaller chunks to chew. Kind of through, not like reading through all of them, but reading through some and then kind of like, glancing through others. And the first thing that was interesting to me, the evolution of the sonnets. Jazz hands. In that they start off like way more optimistic than how they end, and much more like doe-eyed almost, where he's seemingly in love with being in love, if that makes any sense. And again, this has just been like the first week and a half where I've been getting into this, so I'm not saying what I'm saying is true. It's just my very tip of the iceberg sort of interpretation of what I'm reading. That's it. I am not trying to claim that I know anything. I'm not trying to claim super intellectualism. None of that. To me, my very inexperienced interpretation, he starts out very like in love with love, and then you see this evolution of gets kind of bitter, he gets angry, he starts to like go into this like depression thing. And the last few sonnets to me were just like it's like an older type of love. Like it's a more mature, like I can still love, but it's with a deeper knowledge of what you can get into and how you can get burned, basically. But again, I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. The first sonnet I'm working on, number 50, really, really spoke to me, and I wasn't quite sure. Well, first of all, it's a little bit easier to kind of relate to. Again, what I feel like I understand or can read easily with any of the limited literatures I've read. Obviously, a much deeper meaning there. So, like, I just love even this first, like, stanza. How heavy do I journey on the way, when what I seek my weary travels end, doth teach that ease and repose to say, thus far the miles are measured from thy friend. And when I first kind of read it, thus far the miles are measured from thy friend, even that didn't really make sense to me. So kind of pulling it apart a little bit. He's just saying, when you get to the end of your journey, just kind of have this full acknowledgement of what's really taken place. And in this case scenario, what's really taken place, he has left his friend. And who has not been in that position before? Thus far, the miles are measured from thy friend. And I just love that, like, miles are measured. Like, I just love that M and the M. The next sentence that I kind of struggled with, and I know that these aren't really stanzas, it's just kind of where one idea sort of naturally ends, the next one is started. So we've kind of just had like a general, talk about the travel and, how he's set up the scene, so to say. So now the next part, he's like talking about how the horse he's riding on, the beast, is not only carrying him, but also carrying his woes. So the next sentence that didn't make sense to me was, his rider loved not speed, being made from thee. And I had an interesting kind of little conversation with my partner Glenn. I was talking about how I find the use of punctuation super interesting, how he uses commas to separate sentences, because it makes more sense to say, his rider loved not speed, being made from thee. The faster he goes, the further away he is from his friend. But with the comma between speed and being, his rider loved not speed, being made from thee. When I first read it, didn't really make sense. Why is there a comma there? So, Glenn astutely pointed out, like, well, maybe he's meaning it as more of like a breath mark instead of actual punctuation, which, when you kind of look at arias and, choir music and, even in instrumental music, you see those little like apostrophe comma things. Like, that's where you're supposed to take a breath. It's where the music comes to a natural closing of a sentence, maybe, or it's just an emotional breath mark. Another really interesting sentence to me. The beast that bears me, tired with my woe. Tired with my woe. I read that one way, as in like, oh, he's just sick of me being upset. And then, if we keep reading, plods dully on to bear that weight in me, as if by some instinct the wretch did know. So he's not saying the beast is tired of, carrying him because he's a sad human. Like, he's just saying, like, the beast is empathetic. That his sadness is so heavy that even the animal is sympathetic. I mean, even when I'm sad and my cats come up to me and they comfort me, that's how heavy it is. It's crossing that divide of intellect to just pure emotion. I mean, that's some heavy stuff right there. I think I just love the last two sentences especially as well. For that same groan doth put this in my mind, my grief lies onward and my joy behind. Like, if I could ever write the end of a poem that beautifully, he's obviously a genius. But I'm starting to really get into this, and it's very interesting and beautiful, really beautiful. I feel like I definitely picked like a beginner sonnet though, and hopefully this will help inform me of the next one that I've picked, and the next one, and the next one. But essentially, I'm bored, and I found something interesting, and now I'm sharing it on the internet. Thanks for watching me ramble and talk about a very basic beginner interpretation of a subject that people have devoted their entire lives to. I'll see you next time. Bye.